we should start. We like to be timely.
Sure. Well, I want to welcome our speaker, Jeffery Johnson. You may not know Jeffery, but if you visited the Landscape Arboretum, you've seen his work. As a tree and shrub specialist, he maintained many of the woody plant collection in the Arb's public gardens for many years until he retired in December. I haven't been to the Arboretum this fall, and so I'm really looking forward to Jeffery's presentation about the Splendor of Autumn at the Arboretum, and what a perfect day to do that. I hope everyone got out and enjoyed their own autumn splendor in their neighborhood. If you have any questions while Jeffery's talking, put them in the chat and we'll try to answer them at the end. And please mute yourself during the presentation. Thank you. Jeffery, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm excited. Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity here this evening. And I guess it's a good thing that the sundown is getting earlier and earlier as I look out the window, because, you know, it was just a beautiful day today. And if it had been up to me, I would be still outside, you know, putzing in the garden or doing something maybe in the garage or whatever. But I also want to thank you all. You know, Master Gardeners is a wonderful, incredible program, spreading the joy of gardening and doing it in the right way with science-based information. And so I appreciate your contributions to our struggle as it is to improve horticulture. So just a little bit about myself. I am a student of the University of Minnesota. I have a bachelor's degree. My emphasis was nursery and landscape management. I started out in forestry actually, and this was in the late 70s, and realized that there wasn't a lot of, it wasn't a great track that I was interested in forestry. It was either paper or parks, and neither one particularly interested me. So I actually went to work at Bailey Nurseries for a couple of seasons, and that piqued my interest in horticulture. And then I came back, transferred colleges. They used to be in separate colleges, and then worked with many of the people that, or had as professors, many of the people that started or were very influential in the Master Gardener program. Mike Zins became a friend of mine. He was, his master's thesis was actually starting the Master Gardener program in Minnesota. And then people like Bob Mugas, and I got to know Bob Mullen, other professors, Don White, etc. So a lot of the people that used to write all those publications that came out to you if you were a Master Gardener before the internet, a lot of those names are fairly familiar. So yeah, I've worked almost 40 years for the university. I was a student employee on the grounds crew on the St. Paul campus for a couple of years, and then went off and worked in the industry, and then was called back and by my boss, Les Potts, who called me up and said, yeah, we've got a full-time job. You know, it has benefits, vacation, healthcare, etc. Are you interested? And a lot of those things at that time were unheard of in the horticulture industry. So I said, sure, I'll come back. And Les was moving fairly recently before that from the Arboretum to taking over the St. Paul campus grounds. And so I got to know Peter Moll, who is now the director of the Arboretum. And then right before 1986, it was, I think, early June, I ran into Pete at a conference and said, I noticed there's a job open out at the Arboretum. is that still open? And he says, no, we filled that one, but we have this other job over at the research center. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, sure. So I was hired as the orchardist out at the Arboretum in '86, and then did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then got back into more broad landscape plants, trees and shrubs. So I like to think of myself as a well-rounded horticulturist with a lot of varied interests. And so with that, just a little more. Married a long time, have 2 adult children. We're kind of empty nesters, but one of our adult children just moved back in to attend graduate school. She's going back to school for her master's in art therapy. And then I have a son who lives out in Salt Lake City, who works for the University of Utah, coordinating continuing education classes, believe it or not. So yeah, that's about it. And as I said before, my wife works as the development officer for the University Extension. So she works directly with Bev Durgan, and she does fundraising for things like Master Gardeners and 4-H and many of the other centers around the state. With that, I think I'm going to get started, but I do really appreciate the opportunity to present to you tonight. I certainly wish it had been in person. I think that's much more personable, but such is life. So I'm going to just start my slideshow, and everybody can see that. I am going to turn my camera off for now. So stop video. So it was a great privilege for me to work at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum for so many years, and I learned just so much. I think that the work was enjoyable. I loved being outside. I loved working with volunteers. Sorry, okay, I'm gonna just keep going. Since all the questions are going to be in chat, if I hear any sounds or anything, I will try and ignore them, but that can be somewhat difficult. So just learned a ton, and I love a principle that I just learned about just the last couple years. It's called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And if any of you are economists, you might be familiar with it. It's about decision making, and basically it is that the more you know, the more you don't know. And so, yeah, I worked at the Arboretum for a long time, and I like to think that I am fairly knowledgeable, but I also work with people who, like the late Dr. Pellet, Dr. Harold Pellet, and Stan Hokinson, and Steve McNamara, and David Bedford, and Peter Hempstead, and his replacement, Matt Clark. And so it goes on. And so I just realized that yes, I like to think that I was pretty good at things, but I know I don't know everything. So when we talk about fall color, this year is not going to be a spectacular year. We know that. It's unfortunate, but we are, dealt the cards that we have, and that means that there wasn't a great season, be it dire shortage and heat that did not do the trees any favors this year. And so we really don't expect a great fall color, but there are, points here and there. I'm going to kind of assume that you all know about how fall color forms from the sugars in the leaves, and the chlorophyll masks that. And then as chlorophyll deteriorates, it reveals those other pigments in the leaves. But fall is just it's my favorite time of the year. I love the weather as far as working conditions go, and the extended season. It seems like we're getting later and later with the first frost in the fall, and so we have the opportunity to really appreciate a lot of different things, including things like roses, and longer growing season for the annuals. The annuals at the Arboretum are incredible. And Dwayne Otto, the designer for that garden, has a magnificent eye for color and different textures and things. And they are spectacular, and they draw a lot of people in. But I have to profess that the annual garden and things is not my favorite garden at the Arboretum. But that said, we do have a lot of interesting things, and one of the things that really made my job a lot of fun was the variety, through the seasons. And we got to help with setting up the scarecrows and the pumpkin display and winter lights and all kinds of different things. But we do have this scarecrow display out there. Maybe I shouldn't use we anymore, but they do, be it I am retired. But there's a lot of collaboration that goes on at the Arboretum. I think collaboration is one of those wonderful things that we need more of, be it interdepartmental or with businesses collaborating with one another, or different agencies, be it master gardeners and community gardens, or master gardeners and 4-H, or whatever it might be, collaboration. So Bachman's has been very generous to the Arboretum, as has Bailey Nurseries. Bailey Nurseries is one of the largest wholesale nurseries in the country. If you don't know that, they're based out of Cottage Grove, and the Bailey family endowed the Bailey Shrub Walk, which I managed for quite a few years, and that gave me the opportunity to get to know Gordon Bailey personally, as well as the president of the what is her name? I'm having a blank on the name. I can think of her last name, Mechanich, but I can't think of her first name. Anyhow, such is life. So collaborations. And the staff at the Arboretum is really what makes the Arboretum motor turn. And I've said this over and over and over again. It's the passion of the employees, the frontline employees, the gardeners, the education staff, the development officers, et cetera, et cetera. So I picked this one of several staff created scarecrows just to kind of illustrate the creativeness of the staff. I really like this one because it utilizes several different gourds, and I meant to enlarge my pointer, but I don't know if you can see it, but this is kind of like a gourd for the head, and then the arms and the legs and the feet are all cucurbits as well. So thought it was very, very imaginative to utilize that way. And then we have pumpkins kind of coming out our ears. Just a moment, I'm gonna. Sorry, I had to adjust my chair. My leg bumped the lever on it. So this was just created in the last few days. I I do borrow. I try and credit photos whenever I can. I haven't been out to the Arboretum since December to be on the grounds at all. So, but I did go out there for one lunch at the back shop area. So these are borrowed photos from either Facebook or the website, or quite a few of these are not mine, just to make that clear. But our mechanics, both are retired now, but they created this pyramid and the pyramid that's used for the poinsettia tree from scratch, and fabricated all the parts for it. Again, just a fabulous creative job. And then John and Jenny Toole, who grow all these different pumpkins, they were involved in the Care 11 display that you might see on TV, as well as creating this pumpkin tower. And we have pumpkins, you know, kind of all over the place. The curator of art at the Arboretum, really, Wendy DePaulis is her name. She does not appreciate this kind of decoration on the Grandland artwork, though. So, kind of, you know, just goes to show that even within a unit at the Arboretum, we do have differences of opinion. And they just got done with harvesting all the pumpkins, squash, and gourds. They had 300 and some varieties of different pumpkin, squash, and gourds, all cucurbits, you know, vining plants. And John and Jenny Toole grow those. I don't know exactly what the relationship is with the Arboretum and how they manage that, because John and Jenny are the viticulturists at the research center, managing the research grape vineyards. And we display the cucurbits in the Great Hall, as well as some other things. Jewel Engstrom was quite instrumental in creating those chandeliers that you see hung there. So we have a very creative, engaged staff that I think does not get appreciated nearly enough. And then all these different varieties are identified and displayed with little tags on them, but 300 of them. That is a record. 320 something, I think it was the number. Just an incredible variety of different pumpkins and squash and gourds. But you know, pumpkins are not the original crop. Actually, grapes were the original crop, and but apples are why the Arboretum is where it is. And a lot of people don't understand why the Arboretum ended up, you know, 30 miles from campus or however far it is. But interestingly, that goes back to a person named Peter Gideon. And Gideon's Bay on Lake Minnetonka is named after him. And he homesteaded the land that was Native American land right outside of Excelsior. And he developed the wealthy apple after growing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of seedlings. Wealthy was the first hardy apple. And then Mr. Gideon formed a relationship with the university, and they actually had a farm next to his property. But that relationship dissolved because of politics more than anything. And that was fairly just before Mr. Gideon passed away, and the research center there shut down, but then they opened up a few years later at the Horticultural Research Center, which is just down the road from the Arboretum. the Arboretum sprung up as kind of a side dream of Dr. Snyder's, utilizing the resources of the Horticultural Research Center, not the other way around. So we have about, I don't know, 25 or so different cultivars that have been introduced over the years. Honeycrisp being the most noteworthy, Sweet Tango and Zestar and Snow Sweet and many others. But grapes were the first thing grown there. And we do have an extensive grape research program there. And actually some grapes are being developed for just the foliage, foliar color, fall color. But I think grapes are beautiful on the vine as well. So something to think about. But back to the Arboretum and back to mostly trees and shrubs with fall color. We have these beautiful larch trees on the entryway just coming in. This is not very far from the new bike path, if you've heard about that, which connects the old Southwest LRT with the Chanhassen bike trails. But these larch trees are, as you know, a deciduous conifer. So they are conifers, but they lose their leaves or lose their needles in the fall and then regrow new ones every spring. And, you know, there's many different pockets of beauty at the Arboretum. Just to point out one, this is the Tea Room Terrace overlook area outside. Beautiful ash trees there. Unfortunately, we're losing our ash, you know, to emerald ash borer, but there are some other substitutes, and a lot of other just small little areas to contemplate and appreciate at the Arboretum. And as I said in my introduction, you know, it is to our credit that you work, or not our credit, but to your credit that you work on improving horticulture throughout the region. And I think horticulture is just so important for our psyche. You know, we have an epidemic of anxiety and depression, and I think it's gotten so much worse with the onset of COVID, obviously, but also just all the other things that are going on in the country and the world. And I think horticulture can have a important, very important part in creating more community, which I think is essential, breaking down some of the divides that we have, and just trying to get us to kind of slow down and appreciate what we have. You know, an attitude of gratitude goes so far. And so just slowing down, appreciating the macro as well as the micro beauty in everything around us in nature. And I think that can do a lot. So one of my favorite gardens, you know, I told you that the annual garden was not one of my favorite gardens, but one of my favorite gardens is the Prairie Garden. And partly because it has many, many native plants, exclusively natives, like the little blue stem you see here. And I think the Prairie Garden is done very respectfully and sensitively to amplify the beauty of the nature of these different plants. This is prairie dropseed here, and I caught a photo of the dew on the prairie dropseed. So just again, slowing down and noticing the beauty all around us, and then hopefully spreading that beauty throughout the community, encouraging people to up their game, so to speak. The crabapple collection is one of the areas that I maintained for many years, and I think I left it in good shape. I think it was as good as it had ever been as far as the health and beauty of the collection. I had a wonderful group of volunteers that worked with me for many, many years, and I'm still friends with many of them, trying to keep in contact with them, mostly via Zoom and occasional get-togethers, outings. But landscaping for wildlife is one of my other passions. My landscape at my home here is almost exclusively planted up with plants that benefit wildlife in one way or another. But the turkeys love the crab apples, and if you didn't know, turkeys are actually quite good flyers, and they will fly up in these trees. They can cause some damage sometimes with breaking limbs and things like that, but that's one of the things that you have to kind of put up with, so to speak, with wildlife. This tree is one of the trees that predates the Arboretum. It's a sugar maple, and proudly, I suppose, I nicknamed this tree the traffic jam maple. It's right off a 3-mile drive, and it created a traffic jam when it was in full fall color, for obvious reasons. People would just have to get a photo of it and pull over, and so it created this traffic jam. And Alan Branhagen, who has he's the director of operations at the Arboretum, incredible plants person, really knowledgeable birder as well, and written a couple of books. He has adopted this name too, of the traffic jam maple. So, but native maples aren't the only things that I think could or should be utilized in the landscape. This is a Trifluram maple, or 3-flowered maple. This is a mature specimen. We have quite a few others planted around the Arboretum that are much younger than this, but this plant is probably about 40 or 50 years old. Beautiful fall color, and many of the younger plants are similar. They have great fall color. Not a native plant, and most of the time I really encourage people to plant native plants, but there are a few exceptions. Crab apples being one of them, this non-native maple being another, and there are a few others. But hydrangea, not actually native, but a beautiful plant. And if you know anything about retail horticulture, hydrangeas are just still, and they have been for many, many years, just a really hot item. And there's newer cultivars coming out all the time with different colors and different forms. They're still trying to come up with a more compact version of these paniculata type hydrangeas, as well as some of the macrophyllus like Endless Summer, which I'm not a big fan of, but I think these paniculatas are actually a much better choice if you're going for a hydrangea. And they can have color and interest all the way into, all through winter. One little aside that I wanted to just address is we're just into the start of fall, actually. September 20th was the fall equinox, when the sun is right over the equator, and as the earth revolves around the sun basically moves into the southern hemisphere at that point. But winter doesn't start until the solstice, which is December 22nd. So fall runs from September through December. And, you know, it's just an interesting aside. There are a lot of different seasons within that fall period. And hydrangea in the wintertime can be quite beautiful. And that Freeman Maple behind me, behind the hydrangea, very popular. The Freemans being a cross between the red maple and the silver maple, which gives it the silver maple growth and the red maple fall color. And the Bailey shrub walk, one of the favorite plants that attracted people in there in the fall was this smoke tree. This plant may or may not be there anymore because it was slated for removal because it didn't match the name that we had as a designee on it. And that happens occasionally where you get a plant and it's not actually the plant that you think you're getting. So it does happen. And then in the lower right, Davila Lanezera, dwarf bush honeysuckle is, it may be becoming overplanted a little bit. You know, that's subject to interpretation and things, but I think it's a very valuable plant. Something I have a few of in my yard, and I really like them as well. And the roses, the Nelson Shrub Rose Garden and the muted colors there, really highlighted by the beautiful turf, the immaculate kept turf, as well as the roses in bloom. And these roses don't get buried or covered or anything else. They're just out on their own. And they can bloom all the way up until a hard freeze, you know, 20 degrees or so. So think about those things when you're thinking about seasonal interest. And seasonal interest is so very important, you know, to have things in our gardens. And I think you all know this, things in our gardens that spread out the joy, so to speak, throughout the seasons, all 4 seasons. This is the Winterberry collection, Helix Fortissilada. And the thing I loved about this collection was the cedar waxwings coming through, migrating, would a lot of times clean these off in a matter of a week or so. And the cedar waxwings would I don't know what you call a flock of cedar waxwings. I should know, but I don't. But they would flock up in the trees around this collection and then just cycle down repeatedly down onto these berries, feeding on the berries, and then back into the tree to feed. And it was just really a lot of fun. So a great plant for wildlife. Interesting flowers. Interestingly, it's a dioecious plant, so you need a male around for the females if you want fruit. The females are the only ones that get the fruit. So, and I just put this plant in. I don't have a great fall color photo of this plant, but this is black chokeberry. And one of the reasons I put this in was because when I interviewed for the job that I had retired from at the Arboretum as a landscape gardener, woody plant specialist, I was asked, what's your favorite shrub? And I said, well, black chokeberry. And they said, well, why is that? And I said, well, you know, it gets native, it's great for wildlife. It has, you know, good flowers for pollinators. It gets berries that are eaten throughout the fall and winter. and it has a really nice fall color. It's a moderate sized shrub, and it has, you know, beautiful foliage in the fall as well. Did I already mention that fall color? So, you know, a lot of different items that you can tick off as far as that plant. But I've changed my opinion over the years, and this has become my favorite shrub now. This is buttonbush, Cephalanthus occidentalis, which translates cephal being brain, cephalic, and anthus being flowers. So an occidental means just western. So it translates literally to western brain flower. But buttonbush is its common name. And it does get these beautiful rosy seed heads on it late in the fall. And it does have nice foliage fall color as well. Native plant, and I like telling the story about coming across a specimen in the wild on the St. Croix River. In one of the state parks, we were camping and on the St. Croix and camping, and my son got a lure caught in one of these, and then I actually took note of it, and oh, this is a buttonbush. How cool is that? So kind of one of those stories. Witch hazel, another plant that I think, you know, I'm kind of trying to expand the palette of fall and fall color and what that means here a little bit. My witch hazel, and I do have a photo of it kind of off in the side of another photo a little bit later, but mine tends to bloom maybe mid-November or maybe even around Thanksgiving. So very, very late flowering. And then it takes a year for these to develop seeds. And then the seeds are expelled kind of like a cannonball, very tiny seeds, but they're expelled. So very dainty little thread-like flowers that are very frost tolerant, freeze tolerant, and just a really interesting plant. Beautiful foliage, not particularly great as far as any fall color goes with the foliage, but you can see just on the upper portion, those are the spent flowers that will mature into seeds. Some other interesting trees. This is the beech tree, Phagus grandiflora, Phagus grandifolia. And this is just off a 3-mile drive, and it consistently has really nice fall color in and amongst these large oak trees. Just a really nice specimen, beautiful tree. And, you know, with the demise of our ash trees, I think we're going to be looking at a more and more wide variety of trees, especially that we can plant. We're not seeing the demise of so many shrubs, but you know, with emerald ash borer and Dutch elm disease, and now we're talking about thousand canker issues with our oak trees, and bur oak blight with our bur oaks. There's a lot of different maladies out there that can affect things, especially in a monoculture situation. And so we really need to get away from that monoculture of planting. And we have lots of different trees to choose from. This is another native plant. This is Staphylia, Trifolia. Bladder nut is its common name. And it's really nice fall color fairly consistently. I have one of these in my yard. And it's much more upright because of how I've grown it with other trees and shrubs around it. But really cool little bladder like fruits that have beautiful little brown nuts in them. And these turn much darker brown into the winter time. I thought I had added a winter photo. So they turn quite a bit darker brown, not quite so fleshy looking, and provide some winter interest, I think. This is a bald cypress, another plant that's right on the Arboretum property on the service road going down to the back shop area there, right by the large collection. And this would probably be considered marginally hardy by a lot of people, but these plants have done really well in this low-lying area near water. They like to have their feet somewhat wet, but they do pretty well on upland areas as well. But really spectacular fall color. Carpinus, another beech, goes by several different common names. Ironwood, beech, and musclewood are the three that come to mind. And this is right, if you see in the lower left, that's the corner of my concrete pad that's right outside my garage. And so this is bordering my driveway. Beautiful specimen. Gets this muscly, very sinewy kind of bark look to the branches as they age. And they get these little wafers of seeds on them that are really good for wildlife as well. Excuse me. Something else that's not necessarily native to the upper Midwest, but rhododendrons. And rhododendrons and azaleas, are noted for their flowers, but many of them can get really nice fall color as well. This one is called Pink Diamond, and this is growing down in the rhododendron area just down below 3 Mile Drive. And it seemed to color up quite well over many different years. So I included it here. And then this is the backyard of my home. This is the favorite azalea of the light series, and one that I think could and should be grown more. This is the Northern Highlights azalea, and it does color up fairly consistently, not every year, but fairly consistently. And this is probably late October, early November. And as I described, the witch hazel that I have in my yard is just to the right and back a little bit, back behind this Northern Highlights azalea. And then just off to the left is a white fringe tree. Lilacs are not a native plant in Minnesota. They're actually not native to North America. But the white fringe tree is actually very closely related, and I think should be planted more. So, no talk of the Arboretum, I don't think, would be complete without a photo, fall photo of the Red Barn, iconic Red Barn, built in the 1920s by the Bost family, and the whole story in the book that's written about them. But the Eastern Drive goes out to the Red Barn now, and Farm at the Arb is up and running, and there's great success in teaching people a little bit more about where their food comes from. and that disconnect there as well, as far as nature and just us being aware and appreciative of all the things that we have. But on the drive out to the Red Barn from the 3-mile drive, you go through one of the old long-term evaluation nurseries. And this is just off the roadway there. This is a red maple called Brandywine, Acer rubrum. And this is a green most of the summer, but it gets the name from the fall color. And red maples are comparable, if not superior, in my opinion, to the sugar maples for fall color, and I think should be planted more. I have a Northwood in my yard. Northwood red maple was an introduction by Dr. Snyder way back when, but it's a red maple collected from a population near Mille Lacs, I believe. And something else that is not necessarily native to Minnesota, but a North American native. This is the Buckeye Autumn Splendor, fitting for this talk. It was named because it gets a very nice fall color, and the foliage stays nice and clean throughout the summer and fall. A lot of the native Buckeyes that will survive into this area get this scorch. This seems to be quite free of it. I don't know if you know where the name Buckeye comes from, but inside the husk of the fruit is a nut, and the nut has an eyelet, or the vascular bundle where that was attached inside that husk looks like an eye of a deer. And so that's where the name Buckeye comes from. This is a hickory, bitternut hickory, Carya cordiformis. Again, a fabulous tree. I think it should be planted more. We're seeing lots of seedlings around from these trees in the woods, and we're encouraging them. Quite tolerant tree. I think it should be, or could be, considered a good replacement for our ash trees. And the grass collection is really spectacular in the fall, with the beautiful panicles of flowers, and just really, really, really beautiful. The home demonstration garden, the Francis DeVos home demonstration garden, has these blueberries planted around it. And I think that things like blueberries can be incorporated into the landscape. As you probably know, they are similar to azaleas, where they need very low pH and acid soil, which is difficult with our lime-based soils. But this can have spectacular fall color, as well as the flowers and the fruit that you get off of these blueberries. So multi-seasonal interest as well. Fall is a great time to control invasives as well. So on the upper left here, you have a thicket of buckthorn, and these were borrowed from a landscape restoration company off their website that I used for a different talk, but I thought I'd include it here. We would like to see the woods more like the lower right, much more like the lower right. And you are, I'm sure, aware of buckthorn as an invasive, but there are many others as well. One of the distinctions of a lot of the invasives is they do stay green, or they color differently than many of our native plants. And so fall is a great time for controlling them, including Japanese tree lilac, which is probably going to be put on the restricted list within the next couple of years. It's showing up more and more in our landscapes as a potential invasive. And euonymus, burning bush, fabulous plant as far as fall color goes. We have a lot of evidence that that also is becoming invasive. So this is probably number 2, maybe tied with number 1 as far as my favorite garden at the Arboretum. This is the Woodland Azalea Garden, the Dayton Wildflower Garden. Just a beautiful scene in the fall. We would like to see more landscapes like this. And this is my front yard a few weeks ago. I took this for a different reason than this presentation, but I thought I'd throw it in here. As you can see, there's almost no turf grass. I have creeping Charlie. And but also there's not wild strawberry, but barren strawberry in that ground cover as well. As well as things like ferns and gray dogwood and cup plant and the monarda and amelanchier and an arborvitae and other things. So I think, talking about landscaping and creating community, I think that's kind of a double entendre, if you will. You create community within the landscape, but it also creates community within our culture or society. And I'd much rather see the previous photo than this photo, which is just a half a block away from my house. This was taken a couple of years ago, but a large expanse of turf grass and all the leaves raked up and put into bags. I imagine I'm preaching to the choir here, but not necessarily, absolutely. This is a wasted resource, wasted opportunity. The whole campaign, if you've not heard of it, Leave the Leaves. The leaves provide a tremendous amount of habitat for wildlife. I was just talking with someone about ladybug or lightning bugs and what the habitat is for lightning bugs. Well, lightning bugs thrive in areas where they have leaf litter and shrubbery, etc. So if you want the insects and the birds that feed on those insects, you need habitat for them to grow. Speaking of wildlife, though, the Arboretum puts in a tremendous amount of effort in protecting plants from deer. And many people have asked me over the years, a lot of effort goes into it in the fall, especially with erecting deer fences and stuff. But so we have this hardware cloth protecting it from smaller rodents, voles or mice, possibly rabbits, depending on the snow depth. But then these 4 rods around it with wire, 3 strands of wire, one at knee high, one at waist high, one at chest high, that provide protection from deer from rubbing, the antler rubbing that occurs as they're going into rut. And then, beautiful specimens around the Arboretum that are kept artificially, like this Japanese maple that we don't consider hardy here, but it's grown in containers. And a tremendous amount of effort. Fall is really a very busy time of the year for the Arboretum. The whole pumpkin thing. And then right at November 1st, we tear down the pumpkins and start in on the winter lights, and then all the different preparations to go on with that. But if we want this, then we need this, which is a basement of a barn over at the Horticultural Research Center, where these maple trees are stored over the winter in containers, in a environment that allows them to survive. And the tulips in the spring, well, guess what? You need this in order to have the tulips in the spring. So this is the annual garden. All the annuals have been ripped out. The tulips have been planted. I don't know how many tens of thousands they're going to plant this fall. I think they had 50,000 last year, but that's a massive effort. And then, but that's what you get. It is spectacular for about 3-4 weeks, maybe at the most. So, a lot of effort. So with that, just trying to encourage people to think a little bit outside the box. I know that's a cliche, but seek out different plant material, not just maple trees. Maples tend to be, to a lot of arborists, overplanted. And slow down, appreciate what we have an attitude of gratitude. Not every year is a spectacular year for fall color, but there's still a considerable amount of beauty out there. It can be much more subtle, but I think it is very worth our time and effort to slow down and appreciate. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera back on, and then we will see if we have any questions.
We have a couple of questions. I think we have time for a couple. One probably has a long answer, but we'll see if we can, if you can answer it in a abbreviated version. Now and looking forward, what vulnerabilities do our spruce and fir trees have to disease?
Well, I think the fir is less than the spruce, certainly, but the spruce with the canker, Cytospora canker, and there's a couple of other cankers that are starting to affect our spruce, and then the needle cast diseases. Yes, there is a significant threat to that. And then you compound that with global warming, and we could potentially be losing our spruce as far as ability to grow in the environment that we have here. So yes, it's significant.
Some smart person said that the group of cedar waxwings is called an earful or a museum.
Oh, cool. An earful.
Someone asks, how much of the Arboretum is native?
The question is, goes to very little of the Arboretum is original old growth. So it was all either logged off or at one point in time grazed by cattle or cultivated as agronomic land. So in that respect, probably maybe less than 10% of it is quote unquote native. Since we have expanded the prairie area and things like the spring peeper meadow, significant acreage has gone into that. I would say that the land area is increased significantly, but I'd still say it's less than 20-25%. As far as the number of species that are grown on the Arboretum that are native to Minnesota, and the whole native question is, well, is it North American native, or is it Minnesota native, or is it native to something that's much smaller, maybe a 50-mile or 100-mile radius, depending on how much of a purist you are, is part of that answer. But I would say probably about 50% of the species within the collections are native.
A follow-up question to that, are there any magnolias in the collection that are native?
Not to Minnesota, but there are some magnolias that are native. My recollection is to the Appalachians, I believe, and you may have some of those. Yes,
Okay.
we do have some of those, yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, those are the questions that we have. I'm excited because I'm getting 2 button bush delivered tomorrow from Prairie Moon for my rain garden.
Yeah. Are they some of the new cultivars?
No, they're the straight species from Prairie Moon.
I know they've introduced a couple of new cultivars. Fiber optic is one of them. And then there's another one, I can't think of the name of it, but they were selected out of populations for more compact size.
Mm.
So beautiful shrub though. Yep.
Well, thank you very much, Jeffrey.
It's my pleasure. And thank you all as well. So have a good evening, have a good meeting, and let me know if we can help you in the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you,